those are on the floor. Hello?
Don't. You don't need to, it's scary.
I'm gonna be.
I feel bad for everyone who has to stay late. Yeah, it sucks. Cause like they just waste so much time not doing anything. Like it's like if you were doing something the whole time, like I would be exhausted and not happy about having to stay, but at least you'd be doing something. Yeah, right. You know, like rather than sitting there for hours with nothing to do. But you have to sit there. Well, since I'm gonna be done before.
This is like a lame duck session, except it's not.
Except it's, yeah.
Yep,
Did you send that script, Kevin?
I did.
Why didn't it pop up? Sometimes if there's like a lag of delivery. Oh, it hasn't even popped up on like my watch or my phone. Yeah, mine always pops up on my phone before my computer. My wrist always buzzes. I'm like, oh, got an email. Hello? I hit like refer. Oh, you did already. Yes, I did. I mean, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. I just like to know how to spell people's names.
Some of the names are a little tough to pronounce.
There it is. That took a long time.
It's a long way from there, here to there.
Are you staying here for the meeting or? I can if you want me to. It's up to you. Yeah, I can sit in the audience.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
I thought they messed around for a while. We were down here about 3 or 4 o'clock.
I thought so too, but here we are.
Oh, thank you very much.
I lost my pen somewhere during the day. A lot of the time and pencil.
Good, good.
They're
How's it
pretty
going,
fun,
guys?
aren't they? I also feel like I'm agreeing.
My hands are
So,
so before the whole.
some of these names are you good with pronunciation?
Yeah, I mean, I should know all of them. I think it was Brooke, you have them here on the list.
How's it going?
Mr. Ned, Andre,
It's
That's
going.
pretty, so, yeah,
Just so you know.
Tiana
I think I
Howard.
spoke to almost everyone.
Oh,
all of
okay.
this,
Cynthia told me you guys talked about
Pro.
Royan, yeah.
That was
Probably
tough.
more than
I
you
know.
need to, but,
I remember there's like two O's and a
Yeah,
Y.
it's awesome outside, all good.
And then Lewis is
I
pretty
told
easy.
you.
Yeah,
One
good
is to
Lewis is
change
easy.
Oh,
double
that's
the
it.
spell
Yeah.
wrong.
Oh, yeah, that's it. And then my double subs.
Second one
Hey,
is
how are you?
the reference.
Oh, okay.
It's not
And then,
significant.
No,
No
no
crazy.
substance.
I'm doing
No,
testimony
no
for
substances.
Representative Graham.
Okay.
Yeah, I just found out about that.
I think you told me that before I cared.
And then I just told all my folks who should be coming up, and then Greg is over Zoom. There was one more person that I think I sent you guys, which was,
Eight.
Sarah Pager, Sarah Page, she in there? From, Hands Over Water. Let me see if I can check it too.
Didn't know how many copies you needed, so.
Oh, I had enough time this morning, so I got on top of it, turned it on my own.
I thought I put it in here, I don't know what happened to it.
Oh, do you have it then?
No, I don't.
Oh, yeah, let's see.
I forgot what committee this was.
That's a great question.
In the sense that I,
I did way too many.
yeah.
Oh, maybe you didn't. That actually might be
I'm used to judiciary, which is 13 members, 2 advisors, so here's some more
Yeah,
extras.
yeah.
I actually have those collated, so I'm, I have to separate them.
That's
but- Yes.
Yeah, yep, right there, thank you.
Yep.
Oh, boy. So Katie Page Sanders. She can go.
I think we should.
I'll put it last, is that right?
Maybe let's put her before Greg, because
How are
Greg
you,
is the technical expert and then we have
Okay.
questions.
Okay.
Caused me a headache.
What? This?
Is the new,
Page, I don't
are you
know.
working with stuff? Max here. The House Committee on Families, Children, and Seniors will now come to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Chair Young.
Present.
Representatives Kokia.
Present.
Glanville.
Present.
Arbit.
Here.
Edwards.
Present.
McDonald.
Present.
Wozniak.
Here.
Fox.
Yes.
Johnson.
Here.
And Thompson.
Present.
Madam Chair, you have 10 members present. You do have a quorum.
Excellent. Now I need a motion to approve the minutes from our October 17th meeting of Representative Glanville. Thank you so much. All right, it's a busy day, so we're going to hurry and get started. It's an exciting day, too. Today we will be taking testimony and voting out House Bills 5148 and 5149 that address the issue of adoptee birth records and gives adoptees unredacted original birth certificates. And I know this is one of those issues that many of us, you want to take a trip out of the country and you go and you say, I got to get my passport, and then you find all these barriers for other folks that you yourself don't even experience sometimes. And so I think it's good for us to hear this testimony, find out what's really going on in this space. And with that, I would like to welcome up bill sponsor, Representative Pat Allman. He's here, and Representative Kristen Grant is not here. She may be joining us via Zoom, but her legislative director is here, Max Allback. Would you two join us? Thank you so much. And whenever you two are ready to get started, feel free to proceed.
I watched too many people not hit that button to not hit the button, my first attempt. All right. Well, good afternoon, Chair Young and committee members, and thank you for considering this impactful legislation, HB 5148 and 5149. Again, my name is Max Allbach. I am the legislative director for Representative Grant. She's feeling a little bit unwell, so I am stepping in. And we are here, obviously, with Representative Altman, who has been our partner on this legislation. So these bills collectively amend the Health Code and the Probate Code to ensure equitable access to vital records for adoptees in Michigan. Currently, Michigan has laws which restrict access to records, and the most significant of that, of course, are birth records. The laws that restrict this access are outdated and overly complicated, and our bills aim to streamline this process so the right to vital records is the same as someone who is not adopted. While adoption is an amazing process, it does not erase a human being's connection to their birth parents. There's still need for answers to medical questions and a need to access vital documents for passports and other government-issued materials. This need is complicated by Michigan's outdated laws surrounding vital records. Currently in Michigan, there exists a donut hole where if you're born between the years of 1945 and 1980, you were required to receive a court order to receive your birth certificate. If adoptees are born outside of this donut hole, they still need to work with the Central Adoption Registry to obtain a copy of the record, and if a birth parent denies access, the adoptee is simply unable to access this information. These laws are unnecessary, inequitable, and burdens adoptees in Michigan who only wish to access information they should have a right to. The bills collectively amend the Public Health Code and the Probate Code to streamline record access and detangle it from the Central Adoption Registry, and allows parents who terminate parental rights to fill out a contact preference form, which would be provided to an adult adoptee who receives a copy of their certificate. This preference form will help adult adoptees receive the critical information they need while retaining respect for the parents' right to privacy and their right to not be contacted should they choose to terminate those rights. The rights of the parents against being contacted must be respected, but it mustn't serve as a barrier to an adoptee accessing vital information about themselves. Birth certificates should not be sealed documents, but rather a valuable source of information that can contribute greatly to the new life the individual has been granted. We do have two substitutes to offer for both HB 5148 and 5149. They both are technical. I can get into the nitty-gritty should we need, but they correct two references. And then they also correct a mandatory section in 5148, which is naming the law after Representative Grant's mother, Deborah. And we do have a long list of other individuals that are adoptees in Michigan to share their stories. But before that, I would love it to turn it over to Representative Altman, our amazing partner, to discuss even further.
Thank you, Max. And Max, he explained it very clearly, but I'll add my kind of touch to the testimony here. But first, I want to thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members of this committee, for allowing me to testify in support of this bill package. These bills address a critical issue that affects adopted individuals, specifically, as Max mentioned, within that donut hole time period of May 28th of 1945 to September 12th of 1980, who have faced significant hurdles in accessing their original birth records. I just want to start by stating that this testimony is, in my efforts on this legislation, are dedicated to Ruth Sanderson. She is a dear constituent of mine who has been facing this issue for many years, trying to jump through every hoop imaginable to obtain her original birth certificate, just because she happened to have been adopted during a certain time period. Now, as you can see, this is a very niche issue that affects a certain class of people, specifically a certain class of adoptees born in what many people refer to as the donut hole time period for adoptees. But as niche of this issue this is, it's an incredibly important civil rights issue. In the case of Ruth Sanderson, she has essentially become a prisoner of her own country. And I mean, it's a great country to be a prisoner in, but not being able to obtain her passport and fulfill her dream of traveling internationally because she couldn't obtain her birth certificate it's just been incredibly troubling for her. And this has been something I've been working on since I've become elected to the House of Representatives about 3 years ago. So it's incredibly important to me as well. Now, my bill, specifically HB 5149, it complements Representative Grant's bill, House Bill 5148, by eliminating language that allows a parent to file a statement restricting the release of identifying information. Instead, it introduces a contact preference form, aligning it with the provisions of House Bill 5148. Furthermore, the bill extends the rights to access identifying information to those born before July 1 of 2024, unless their parents have filed a form denying consent. There are some additional provisions in my bill as well. The bill also added a new section to ensure that restrictions on releasing identifying information does not prohibit individuals from obtaining an unredacted copy of their original birth certificate. This is a significant step towards transparency and self-discovery for adopted individuals. In conclusion, I just respectfully request that the committee's support for these two bills. The bills represent a significant step forward in granting adopted individuals the right to access their birth records, while also respecting the choices of birth parents. This legislation aligns with principles of equity, transparency, and respect for all parties involved. And I want to thank you for your time and consideration, and happy to entertain any questions if you have some.
Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your testimony on today. Do we have questions? Okay. Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Just to be clear, boy, I can hardly see him through the chair. If we could move that chair. Thank you. The black chair. I just can't see through it. Thank you. Oh, you can't move it. Anyway, what kind of birth parents is there a carve out or something for, you said, except for in certain situations, birth parents may fill out this preference form?
Yeah,
Could you explain that to me?
Coming up to testify, I'll let him explain the nitty-gritties of that. That was a last-minute addition on my bill. Originally, I just wanted to strike the language, but we wanted to be fair to parents and respect their privacy in some way or capacity. Just for context for the committee members here, this really wasn't even an issue until, to my understanding, 9/11 occurred. And that's when the federal government made it so you had to have your original birth certificate to obtain a passport, correct? An amended or a non-original birth certificate won't do it. So it really didn't even become an issue until, that fateful day in 2001. So just some further context here. But Representative Johnson, we're going to get your question answered. Like I said, we got some experts coming up to testify on that, and we'll kind of explain the nitty-gritties of that portion of the bill.
Thank you.
Well, you gotta give us.
Okay, thank you. Next, Representative Edwards.
I'm not sure if I should hold my question for the expert.
Okay, you can. That's
Okay.
fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Kofia.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the bill sponsors for bringing this forward. My question, it may be for you, it may be for your expert folks who are testifying as well, but in the case of someone, for example, who gives birth as a result of abuse, sexual abuse, etc., and may have the desire to stay anonymous and move on with their life, is there any exception in this legislation to respect the wishes of those folks in that circumstance where they are asking not to have their identity revealed?
Well, their name is going to be on the original birth certificate, so there is going to be one form of identifying information that really cannot be redacted, to be quite honest with you. One thing I'll add, Representative, in the new modern digital age that we live in now, the privacy concern is kind of out the window. And I say that because with 23andMe and all these genealogy programs that you can utilize, if you want to find out who your original birth parent is, you're going to be able to do that. And so I think it just makes sense to give these adoptees during that time period the freedom and the ability to just obtain their original birth certificates, so they can have some freedom, so they can travel and do some of the necessary things they want to do in their lives. We want to protect individuals, original birth parents as well, especially for a situation like you mentioned, an abusive relationship, or I could probably think of a dozen other scenarios as well. We're trying to strike that balance between the two, but we really, the intent is to allow these folks to obtain their original birth certificate.
And if I could chime in as well on that, I know that when someone receives the birth certificate, they will be supplied that contact preference form that will determine whether that parent would like to be contacted as a further effort to respect that right. But I know some of the folks that we have here today, including our expert, will be able to shed a lot more light on that nuance, that rightful nuance. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Representative Thompson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you very much, but if you were unable to answer this, I can ask the expert. Just trying to familiarize with the adoption process. So if a minor is adopted by parents, so they're 10 years old and they want to take them out of the country, what do they use right now for a birth certificate if they have to have that original birth certificate with passport?
Like I mentioned before, this only affects a certain class of adoptees.
So if you were born after that date,
that's
you
correct.
can
It's a different
access-
process, and it's a lot easier to obtain your original birth certificate. It's just these folks, that at least my intent, it's these folks that are in that donut hole period from 1945 to 1980. It's almost impossible to obtain your original birth certificate.
What changed in the legislation that prompted that?
I don't know, to be quite honest with you, and I'm hoping that he can shed some light on that, because I honestly have not got that answer as well. Like, why did they do that all of a sudden, and why this time period, back then? I understand we want to, maintain privacy and all of that, but I'm still unclear on that as well, Representative.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Okay. Any additional questions? Okay. Seeing no further questions, gentlemen, thank you so much for your testimony. Yes. Next, we will hear from Rebecca Masty, the public policy advocate from the Michigan Catholic Council. Conference, what did I say? Michigan Catholic Conference. Get it right, conference.
Yes, wonderful. Thank you, Representative. And I have my card here. I apologize for running in at the last minute, but really appreciate the opportunity just to raise a couple of concerns that we came across in talking with some of our agencies in light of these bills. And to preface my comments, I haven't had a chance to review the subs. I didn't see that those were available till just now. So these are based upon the originally introduced bills. So again, thank you. I'm Rebecca Masty with the Michigan Catholic Conference. While we recognize the longing that exists to connect with one's birth parents and heritage, following consultation with the leaders of our state's Catholic Charities agencies, which facilitate adoptions, we must express opposition to House Bills 5148 and 5149 and removing the option for birth parents to deny the release of their identifying information. It is recognized that today the vast majority of infant adoptions are open adoptions and all parties are readily known to each other. However, some women still have reasons to opt for a closed adoption and to deny releasing their identifying information. For a few birth parents each year, having an option for confidentiality is vital. Without it, they may otherwise not choose adoption. Many of the Catholic adoption agencies have found that the majority of cases in which an adoptee wants to know their parentage, arrangements are made under the current law. While past promises of confidentiality made to birth parents must continue to be honored, the law has also allowed agencies upon request to reach out to the other party. Many times this inquiry leads to an exchange of contact information or a meeting. Yet some birth parents maintain good reason to request confidentiality. In some instances, there is concern for the mother's safety, especially if she is threatened by abusive situations or would possibly be seen as offending her family or culture. On the other hand, later discovering the circumstances of one's birth has been troubling to some adult adoptees, for example, in instances of rape. Concerns were also raised that these bills could possibly conflict with the state's Safe Delivery for Newborns law, which allows for a baby to be anonymously surrendered within 72 hours of birth to an emergency service provider and later adopted, and this is to prevent child abandonment. So with these concerns, we encourage the bills be opposed and welcome further discussion going forward with the bill sponsors.
Thank you so much. Representative Glanville.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for being here today. Just to clarify, we're talking about this group from 1945 to 1980. So any children adopted after 1980 already have access to these open records, or is that? I mean, how? I guess I'm a little bit confused because this particular group of adoptees. The rules aren't the same. So I guess we're just looking to make the rules equitable. Is that what we're doing? And then how is it detrimental? I'm sorry, I'm just confused.
And to that point, Representative, we are going to have some experts
that
are going to help us with that.
Maybe I'll just wait for that. Thank you.
We can defer to some of the experts. If you would you care to comment? I won't.
At this point, I would probably have to bring it back to our agency directors and get some more information. So I welcome further discussion on this as well.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much. Next, we'd like to hear from Heath Lowry, the Michigan Coalition to End Domestic Violence. Heath, thank you for joining us today.
Good afternoon, representatives. As was stated, my name is Heath Lowry. I'm from the Michigan Coalition to End Domestic and Sexual Violence, where I serve as a policy staff attorney. We are a nonprofit that represents over 70 domestic and sexual violence service providers across the state and human trafficking service providers as well. I stand before you today to ask you to oppose these bills as they are written, simply in the name of consent for the birth parents here. It's there oftentimes in sexual violence, including incest and rape, that particular survivor may choose to give their child up for adoption. And in that case, it may be harmful or heavily traumatic to be brought back into contact with that child before they are ready to be in contact. And the current system allows for consent on both sides, and these bills, as they're written, take away consent from one side for this contact. I understand the need for birth records in the passport process and other things, but to my understanding, the State Department requires proof of citizenship, and for that, I would believe that a birth certificate as is would stand. So it's really, I'm willing to, in the past there have been amendments to respect the consent of the birth parents, and we would be more than happy to speak with the sponsors on that and to make sure it is an actually equitable treatment and respect for the rights of those parents. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lowry, for your testimony. Do we have any questions for Mr. Lowry? All right, seeing none, thank you again so much for being here. Next up, we are going to hear from Ned Andre, who is both an adoptee and an adoptive parent. Come on down. Don't forget to press the little red button, and when you are ready, feel free to begin.
Thank you, Honorable Chair Young, and to the members of this distinguished committee. My name is Ned Andre. I am represented by Christian Grant in District 82. I'm a citizen of the United States. I'm Michigan born. I'm biracial. I'm half Anglo-Saxon, half Nigerian. I'm transracially adopted, meaning I was placed in a Caucasian family. I'm an adopted person, and I'm in this closed records era, or the donut hole, which means that I was adopted between 1945 and 1980. We could say 1968 specifically. I was raised by white parents, and I had a lot of questions growing up that they could never answer. So when I turned 18, my adoptive parents gave me my adoption file. And that file was just one paragraph about my birth mother and one paragraph about my birth father. I learned that my biological mother wanted no contact, and I have respected her wishes for more than 30 years. I still had questions about my biological father, and I had learned that he was Nigerian. So in 2021, before I traveled, I did a bunch of research based on the information in my file, and then I traveled to Nigeria in search of my father. Using those clues that were in my adoption file, I believe that I found a man that would be my biological father. We took a DNA test together, and the results came back negative, 0% probability that he was my father. I spent considerable time, money, $20,000 to be exact, and a lot of emotional capital, only to have no success. I was very dejected, and I returned to the adoption agency, and I learned that my adoptive parents had not given truthful information to the agency. So the file that had been given, they were not facts. They were presented to my family and I as facts, and they were not. Today, the only way to obtain my original birth certificate is through the courts, and a judge would only release my record if I can prove that both of my biological parents are dead. But how can I prove that my parents are dead when I don't even know who they are? So the task before me is impossible. The process that the Michigan-born adult adoptees must follow, it's complicated and sometimes impossible. It's inhumane, and it's unacceptable to me. I believe strongly that all Michigan-born people have the right to obtain their own vital record, and that this must include adult adopted people. Yet the current law denies Michigan-born adoptees like me a fundamental human right that's extended to other residents of Michigan, to know who they are and where they come from. I thank Representative Grant and Representative Outman for bringing these bills forward, and I would respectfully ask that this committee restore rights that have been taken from me as an American and as a Michigan resident.
Thank you so much, Ned, for being here. Do we have any questions for him? All right, seeing none. Again, thank you so much for your testimony. Next, we will hear from Brooke Van Pruyen, a program manager at D.A. Blodgett, is that correct? St. John's, that specializes in counseling, foster care, and adoption. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Well, I am a program manager, and I oversee Adoptive Family Support Network, a statewide program for adoptive foster kinship families. Today I'm here to share light on my story as a birth mother who placed a child, and my hope is to give you some understanding and some perspective, a little bit of fresh perspective, though I placed long ago, of the similar story of so many birth mothers that came before me. So greetings, Chair Young and committee members. I'm Brooke Van Pruyen, represented by Rachel Hood. I'm a birth mother who is here in support of these bills, giving equal rights to adult adoptees accessing their vital records. I was a young mother of two and recently separated when I found myself pregnant. I was terrified and ashamed to have gotten myself into this position. I never imagined how the decisions I was about to make would forever define mine and my son's existence. The only guidance I received came from a private agency, an attorney paid for, that was working with the adoptive family, who I love and adore, so keep that as a frame of reference. I was not prepared for how traumatic the experience of relinquishment would be. I was discharged from the hospital just 24 hours after giving birth. I walked out of the doors, and without any proper goodbye to my son, he was placed into a vehicle. I stood frozen and confused as he was driven away by his new mother. As for me, I was driven to an attorney's office that I had never met. I was hysterically crying and physically unable to sign. I remember this attorney growing frustrated and telling me, "You really need to get these papers signed so you can get home to see your own children." I was defeated. I signed the documents and was immediately dropped off at the airport. I stood alone, having just given birth and fearing for what I had just done. I vowed to never speak about my son again, telling myself, the shame and guilt you feel and how you felt treated by that attorney were all consequences of your bad choices. I tried blocking the pain by keeping the promises I made to my son to be a better person, to be a better mother to his siblings, and that he was better off with his new family. Looking back, I wish the younger me knew I wasn't a bad person or mother, and my son wasn't better for not knowing me. Years later, I randomly looked up the word adoption in the Yellow Pages. Adoptive Family Support Network was the first business listed with a number for a warm line. I called, a volunteer answered, and I uttered the words for the first time, "I am a birth mother," and began sobbing. She let me cry for as long as I needed and asked me if I would come into their office and meet their director. Somehow I agreed. The woman who answered the warm line was an adoptee of this donut era who hadn't met her own birth mother, and the director was an adoptive mother. They made me feel worthy and wanted, even knowing I was a birth mother. It took years and support I received from the adoption community to get me where I am today and being proud of who I am and without shame or guilt for the choices I felt no other option but to make. Today I'm the leader of that organization and have spent 17 years trying to make that same space for others to heal. I have built Michigan's largest statewide network for adoptive, foster, and kinship families. My work is dedicated to supporting adoptive parents so they can be best at supporting the needs of their adopted children. In 2022, I briefly, unsuccessfully reunited with my son. This was the first time I had ever met him. He struggled with finding his identity. Even if well-intentioned at the time, decisions were made for my son by me, his adoptive parents, the agency, lawyer, laws, and so much more that prevented him from building a healthy self-identity formation. Keeping accessible information away robbed him of pieces of his biological history that could have helped prevent some of the struggles he has and continues to face into young adulthood. Outdated government laws and red tape shouldn't be the gatekeepers of secrets from adult adoptees. They deserve the equal right to have access to their own vital records and to choose how they proceed with the information. When an adoptee calls the same warm line that I did, we shouldn't have to ask what year their adoption was finalized to know how or if we can help them navigate processes. Attempting to protect the privacy of birth mothers like myself shouldn't still be trumping the well-being of basic human rights of adoptees to know who they are. Most birth mothers never wanted this protection in the first place, and I am not saying that's all, and there are circumstances outside of that. But adoption research has shown birth mothers with closed adoptions most often do not wish for the government to continue protection of their rights to privacy from their adult adopted children. What we want is for them to be courageous in deciding for themselves. I urge you to stand in support of House Bills 5148 and 5149, giving all Michigan adult adoptees equity and the right to access their vital records and streamlining the navigation of those processes. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony, for your personal testimony. We appreciate that. Are there any questions? Okay. Representative Wozniak.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A quick question. You're a director? You're the head of what you do?
I'm the program manager over Adoptive Family Support Network, which is a program that is a service underneath of D.A. Blodgett St. John's.
And what is the advice you give to people that want to adopt? Or have to put children up for adoption?
You know, that's the interesting thing of this warm line that we run is we don't know what the call is that comes, and to be able to give safe options to any birth mother that was able to make that call, to know they have choices and that they have options in that. But being able to give non-judged or non-directed advice. That's where we kind of come in as that nonpartisan space to be able to do that aside from our agency, to be able to say, here are your options, or agencies where you could go and seek that support to find not just one agency. I don't say, ooh, adopt or place your child with DA Blodgett. I say, here are your options on all sides so that they can make choices for themselves.
So you still give them an unbiased opinion as to their...
Absolutely, absolutely.
Good. And
I
if
don't
they're-
say that I'm a birth mother myself when they call. Just as that woman who answered my call didn't say she was an adoptee who hadn't met her own birth mother.
Do you find that many of them are embarrassed?
Oh, I think that it's riddled in shame and guilt and fear. I think the space that we're in as birth mothers in that moment, you know, the common average age is 23 and already has a child. That's a space where you're so worried about what your parents are going to say or what did you do? And just today's modern age, though, allows you to say, hey, there are options, and it's okay if you want to parent, and it's okay if you choose whatever plan moving forward. But that wasn't how society was for these families of the 1945 to 1980 donut era. It's just not. These privacy laws were built as protection to protect adoptive parents, oftentimes who may have struggled with infertility or the shame of us birth mothers for what ungodly things we may have done. Yeah. And to look back, I look back and I see the damage in what I have done and the roles where I chose to shove it so deep and pretend that it didn't happen.
Yeah, it's good to hear that those dogmas and stigmas are beginning to change.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Representative, and thank you again for your testimony. Next, we'll hear from Tiana Halver, is that correct? A filmmaker and executive producer of a documentary, Reconnecting the Dots. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Chair Young and members of the committee for giving me the opportunity to testify today. My name is Tiana Halver, and I am represented by Angela Regas. I am also a Michigan-born transracial adoptee raised by white parents. Despite being in reunion with my birth family, I am still denied a copy of my own birth record, even today as an adult. Knowing who my biological family is has helped me understand my racial identity in new ways, and securing that knowledge and connection was such a powerful experience that I created a documentary about my experience called Reconnecting the Dots. On behalf of all adoptees in Michigan and throughout the United States, I thank Representative Grant and Representative Outman for the bipartisan effort of these bills. As introduced, House Bills 5148 and 5149 will finally restore a right I should have had and that all Michigan-born adopted people once had, the right to request and obtain your own vital record as an adult without overly burdensome or unnecessary restrictions. The bills get rid of the infamous donut hole in current law and eliminate the excessive red tape that adult adopted people encounter when they request a single piece of paper, a copy of their own birth record. House Bills 5148 and 5149 finally brings Michigan vital records law into the 21st century, joining 15 other states with similar laws. What I appreciate most about this legislation is having the legal right to apply for my birth record like all other Michiganders. Anything else is unequal.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Do we have any questions? I have one. So you say you reconnected with your birth parents. I'm not sure about this, so forgive me. So if your birth mother or your birth father wanted your original birth certificate, could they get it?
The only way that I actually was able to connect with my birth family was because she had to go through a confidential intermediary. So she did not have access to any of my birth records. She had to hire somebody through the courts to even be able to have access. And it's really not access. That person gets the access and does all the finding. And then it's a matter of that person making the connection. But otherwise, she couldn't see anything to know who adopted me. I couldn't see who was on my birth record, none of that. So I haven't even been able to get that.
Yeah, because I was thinking, as the birth mother, if I were the birth mother and my name is on the birth certificate, and even though the adopting parents can't get access to that original birth certificate, can I, as the birth mother, get access to that original birth certificate? And I'm hearing that not even
I don't.
would be able to
I don't
get it.
think she had, because once it was closed, all the records were sealed.
I see. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Oh, did you have one? Oh, yes, Representative Thompson, before we move on.
Thank you so much. So I have a question I hope you can ask. So I've been listening to this, and it is a bit confusing. So the donut hole that existed between 45 and 80, if someone was born after 1980, past that date, their process for closed adoption, open adoption, everything is totally different? So
I believe yes. I think we'll have one of our experts will be
Okay.
able to speak more
Okay.
to that.
I know, we're waiting on that expert. Thank you.
Okay, amen. Thank you so much for joining us today. All right, next we will hear from Katie Page Sander from Hands Across the Water. Thank you for joining us, Katie.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Young and members of the committee. My name is Katie Page Sander, and I am represented by Carrie Reingens. I come before you today as an adoptive parent of two, a spouse of an adoptee, and as a child welfare professional with 26 years of experience working with children, adults in the adoption triad. I'm currently on the board of directors of the Michigan Federation of Children and Families, which includes 60 member agencies serving children and their families across all 83 counties in Michigan. I am also the executive director of one of these member agencies, Hands Across the Water. We are a private nonprofit in Washtenaw County, licensed in the state of Michigan to evaluate applicants for adoption and to place and supervise children for adoption. Since 1999, Hands Across the Water has placed over 1,200 children in adoptive homes through intercountry adoption, infant adoption, and the adoption of children from the child welfare system. Access to one's vital records and truthful information about their identities is a basic human right of adoptees. House Bills 5148 and 5149 would end Michigan's antiquated practice of denying adopted individuals this right, joining 15 other states who have enacted similar legislation. Those focusing on birth parents' right to privacy to oppose these bills fail to acknowledge that this practice of amending birth certificates was originally begun in the 1940s as a strategy to prevent birth parents from interfering with their child and their adoptive families, not to protect birth parents. Additionally, in states like New Hampshire, one of the 15 states that provides adoptees unrestricted access to their original birth certificates, less than 1%, 0.074% of birth parents have indicated that they do not wish to be contacted by the children that they relinquished. These bills would allow this small fraction of parents to indicate this same request. We are obligated as adoption professionals to listen to the voices of adoptees, birth parents, and adoptive families, and as well to recognize the large body of research that has changed how we understand the importance of trust, connection, and openness in healthy identity formation. Thus, I join with the advocates on all sides of the adoption triad in advocating for openness over secrecy and truth over lies for my children, my husband, and the children and families that I serve. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Do we have any questions? Okay, well, thank you again. Next, we have Gregory Luce, the founder of Adoptee Rights Law Center and executive director of Adoptees United, Inc.
Thank you,
You're
Chair
up.
Young. I hope you can hear
There
and,
he is.
and
You're
see me. So please let me know if you can't.
Yes, we can hear you. Can you
Thank
hear
you.
us?
Chair
Okay.
Young, members of the committee. My name is Gregory Luce. I'm here personally and as an attorney with the Adoptee Rights Law Center and as a core partner of the Michigan Adoptee Rights Coalition. I'm considered a national expert on the issues raised by these bills. Importantly, I'm also an adopted person and the father of two. These bills, just so we understand, are about a single piece of paper, an adult adopted person's own original birth certificate. It is not about adoption agency records. It's not about court adoption records. It's not about open versus closed adoptions. It is not about anonymity, which is impossible promise to make, and it's legally impossible under Michigan law. It is about a human right as adults to know who you are and where you came from. To date, more than 100,000 people across the country have received in the mail their own original birth records. Adopted people in Alabama have, for the past 20 years, requested their own birth records, and in a few weeks, they receive a copy of it in the mail. In the past 3 years, more than 20,000 New York adoptees have also done this. Just this past year, the rights of Louisiana-born adopted people have been restored, and they are now receiving their own records without restrictions. This is the same for other states, including Connecticut, Oregon, Alaska, Kansas, South Dakota, and Vermont, and will be soon from our own state of Minnesota, and very likely Georgia. And with all of these states, no issues have been reported other than how long it may take to get your birth record in the mail. These laws work, and they are necessary because they are about the autonomy and equality of all people, specifically adopted people like me. In the diverse states that have restored a right that Michiganders also once possessed, the world has not fallen apart, adoption has not suffered, and lives have not been ruined. Providing a birth record privately and directly to the adult named on it becomes a simple, meaningful, and powerful acknowledgement of who we are. And the myths, the secrets, the shame embedded into our adoptions decades ago are addressed truthfully and fully in a way that most people are trusted to do. That is, the people involved directly in this issue are those best able to deal with their own truths, honestly and privately, and if they so desire, without further engagement. That's what this bill does. It takes Michigan's current outdated and Byzantine law and distills it down to one piece of paper that is ours. Nothing more, nothing less. We ask for your support of HB 5148 and HB 5149, and I'm certainly open to all the questions that you've all raised during this committee hearing so far.
All right.
I will say a couple of
No, go
responses
ahead.
real quick. One of the issues came up about, does it interfere with the safe haven law? It does not. Under the safe haven law, a birth in a hospital even, under the safe haven law, the child is listed as, the parents are listed as unknown, and the baby's name on that birth record is considered baby doe. So it does not interfere with that whatsoever.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Representatives, questions? I know Representative Glanville, then Representative Thompson, so Representative Glanville.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you. Finally, we get to the expert. Okay. So yeah, I was just trying to clarify. I understand the concept of the donut hole, but what I'm trying to understand is, are we changing the law for folks adopted post-1980, or are we only changing the law to bring those in the donut hole up to the post-1980?
It's a great question, and I'm worried we got involved too much in this donut hole. The donut hole will be eliminated by these bills, but what it also does is it makes it equal across all adopted people. So it is equal along, no matter when you were born. You can fill out a form, pay the nominal fee to the Vital Records Department, and in a few weeks you should get your original birth record plus possibly a contact preference form from a parent.
So
that's how these states do it. And the reason to do this is because, and as Representative Altman indicated, technology has stripped away any idea of anonymity, which is impossible in the first place. It's stripped away many aspects of privacy even. And the best way to illustrate that is, and we've always had the tools, adoptees have always had the tools, and birth parents have had the tools to find people. In the past, it was cash, $2,500 cash in an envelope, and a searcher had access to information that other people didn't have, and you knew who you were, who you're born to, or who your child was within a few weeks. And that was available to people who had the means to do that. But the other tools included social media, but now our most effective and least expensive tool now is DNA. And what DNA does is it makes it worse for everybody when you have laws like this in place in Michigan. So you take a DNA test and you find a match to first or second cousin. You contact that first and second cousin, who then contacts an aunt, who then contacts a brother. And the question being raised by this family across an entire line is who relinquished a child for adoption in 1968. And instead of providing a mechanism where you apply for the record, and if a parent files a contact preference form, and that's a discrete confidential communication between the birth parent and the adoptee, you have a situation where this information is much more publicly available, if not spread across an entire family. So if the concern is about privacy of birth parents, which, as one testifier said, was never the purpose, and it was not the purpose of sealing of the records in the first place. But if that is the concern, you're really, the states that adhere to this secrecy for the sake of secrecy are really sticking their heads in the sand, because it is much worse to keep the laws in place like this one, where it incentivizes the use of DNA and just throws privacy, the aspect of privacy, out the window. So that's really, so what this law does is it makes it equal for all. It gets rid of this distinction between were you adopted before 1945 or after 1980? Are you in this donut hole? And it makes it so that it should be where you apply for your own birth record. It's yours, it's no one else's, and you get it in the mail a few weeks later.
Thank you, and I appreciate the explanation how how the modern technology has brought a whole new perspective to this. And maybe this is a question for the bill sponsor. I'm just curious: are we changing practice for folks who were adopted post 1980, or are we only changing the donut hole so that it's all equal? Like, I'm just curious.
We're changing the law for all adopted people, whether they're adopted in 1980 or between 1945 and 1980. Everyone would be treated the same way. So it is changing the law for those born or adopted after 1980,
So
as
currently-
well as those adopted at any part of.
So currently, people adopted after 1980 also have challenges in this regard? I'm
No,
sorry.
so what we are doing is, as well as aligning things between all adoptees, we're aligning things between those who are not adopted as well, those who were always raised with their birth family. So just as you and I would, we can request a copy of our birth certificate at any time, we're aligning that for adopted individuals as well and allowing them the same access after the age of 18.
So I'm sorry, I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but I just am not understanding this. If I were adopted in 1981,
Right
I would
now, you
not
would
be
still
able
have-
to
you would
access
still have
my.
red tape that you would have to clear. We are removing that red tape.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, okay, wait,
That's-
let's,
sorry, I
hold
just
on.
wanted
one
to
sec- No,
get-
no, it's fine. What
got
I
it.
just want to stop right here and recognize Representative Christian Grant, another one of the bill sponsors. I would like for you to provide your own comments, if you would like right now. Representative Grant, your legislative director did an excellent job, but it's also something different when we speak to our own bills. So if you wouldn't mind, if you're able.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry. I'm sure my team is thinking, as the bit of a control freak that I am, I was not here because I wasn't feeling well, but this is such an important issue, and we've worked really, really hard on it. So I just did want to come and be present as much as I could. This bill is, or this package of bills is something that I was really excited to work on with such a strong community of supporters who have been working for such a long time. My mother is adopted, and so this is a journey that I have taken with my mother. When she was pregnant with her second child, my younger brother, she went through some really extreme medical issues. To the point where she was very far along in her pregnancy, but the doctors told her that she would need to abort. They could not figure out why she was experiencing the medical issues that she was. She lost her sight during her pregnancy. They didn't know if that would be permanent, as well as other things. And so she had a very understanding person at the adoption agency that she had worked with, and the person said, listen, if you write a letter to your birth parents, I will send them that letter, even though that may not quite have been the procedure, but her health issues were so serious because all of her records were sealed. And so at that time, her birth mother received the letter, and her birth mother did respond with a lot of other anecdotal information, but never actually provided the medical information that she needed. Thankfully, my mother had my brother and her eyesight returned, but it was just a very painful time to have to ask someone else, beg them in one of the most vulnerable moments of your life for information that they could decide to provide or not. And every time an adopted individual, and even a descendant of an adopted individual, when I go to the doctor and they ask me, do I have a history of cancer or other things, I have to tell them myself as a grandchild, I am not sure. And so, you know, at a very early age, they said, well, we should start all of this preventive care because we do not know what your history is. And, you know, we just had close to 1,000 people on the Capitol lawn today talking about pro-life and the right to life. And I would say to that, if you really care about people being born and being here and deserving life, you should also give them all the tools that they need to live a life that is full. To not have to ask someone to scrounge for information to receive a passport when you have done nothing wrong to not receive one. To not know if there is something vitally detrimental to your health that could hinder you. You could have been using preventive care your whole life, but you didn't know. You know, so things like this, if we really believe in right to life and people having a second chance at life, I think this is really important for that. And so my mother did find her birth family. In 2019, December, right before Christmas, Erica Curry, one of our advocates, brought a DNA kit to our home. I don't quite believe in putting your DNA out there, but I know who my parents are. So me and my mom had a really good conversation. She said, what do you think about me doing this? And so she took the kit, and immediately when we got her response, she had over 100 hits on Ancestry.com. That makes the process pretty messy, right? Over 100 people who we could reach out to and say, you know, we think we're related to you. One of those closest hits was her father's sister and also her half-sister, her mother's child, who none of these people knew that she existed. Her father did not know she existed. That was taken away from her, the opportunity to build a relationship with him. And the only way that my mother, without taking that DNA test, the only way my mother would have been able to find her birth family is if she could prove to the state and the adoption agency that both of her parents were dead. And that is such a cruel requirement to tell someone, the people that you've been dreaming of your whole life, if you can prove to us that they are dead, we will give you this document. And so we had to use the information on Ancestry.com to prove that her parents were dead. And that was really painful for her because, of course, you have some hope that someone is alive so that you can meet them. And right. I'm sorry for those long comments, but to give some light on what an adoptee has to experience, and it's a cruel process.
We are, and so committee, we are running short on time. I want to be clear about your question, Representative Glanville. Have you gotten the answer that you're looking for?
I have, yes.
Okay,
thank you.
I thought so, but I wanted to be certain that we're good with that. Quick question. Okay, Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Does this apply to a donor eggs, donor sperm, that whole scenario also, that they would have access to their medical records?
We are only talking about adoptees in this legislation.
But that's an adoption process.
A live birth who has been adopted, that's what we're talking about. Does that answer?
All the surrogacy situations.
So we're not talking about surrogacy here. We're talking about live birth where a birth mother has a live birth and then that born child is adopted.
Okay, so it does not apply to all.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. Thank you both so much, and thanks again for coming back up. All right, so next we're going to read in the cards. We've got to read in these cards before we move forward. Ryan Walk, WOALKES, Bridge Street Ministries, not wishing to speak but is in support of the bill. Janet Reynolds Snyder, Michigan Federation of Children and Families, not wishing to speak but in support of the bills. Let's see, Mandy Bolter, St. John's Home, not wishing to speak but in support of the bills. Erica Curry Van Fee and Julian Blair, Michigan Adoptee Collaborative, not wishing to speak but in support of the bills. Valerie Lemon, oui, monsieur. Oh, I'm silly. Adoptee Advocates of Michigan, not wishing to speak but in support of the bills. Christian Geidzen, Arbor Circle, not wishing to speak but in support of the bills. And Genevieve Marin, is that correct? Does that look right? Okay. Rod, not wishing to speak, opposes the bills. Right to Life of Michigan opposes the bills. I believe those are all the cards that we have. Okay, okay. I was about to go at ease, but I don't think we have to. Who else had a question? All right. Representative Edwards, who's your question for?
I mean, I guess anybody who really can answer it. My question is still, I'm still trying to get clarification on the other side of the coin. I get the children having the right to know who their adopted parents are, but what about those parents who do not want the identification known, who do not want to be exposed? What are we doing to protect those parents?
Okay. I know that a couple of people addressed it earlier. Who wants to address that? Greg, Greg?
Yeah,
There he
I'm
is.
still here. The question is, what about birth parents who want some sort of protection? Is that what I understand?
Right, the birth parents who still want privacy.
Right. Well, the issue with that is they're not getting it currently under current law because of the incentivizing of DNA. It just is terrible. And so this gives them, I believe in empowering people. I believe in empowering adoptees and getting their own records, but also this bill empowers birth parents who have any concerns to file on their own contact preference form saying they don't want contact. And believe me, as an adopted person, when you get that, it's devastating to know that your birth parent doesn't want contact, but it's respected. And so that's the most direct and easy and discreet way to do that. And that's why we've included and been very precise on what we included, the contact preference form that can be filed and is attached to the birth record, giving that direct communication to the adopted person. So that's the best protection we can offer. It makes it much, much worse if you try to just restrict it completely. That's where we are today, and it's a Wild West out there.
Yeah, wait, because we got to go. We got to get back to session. I'm sorry. All right, so what I'm hearing is equitable access for all adoptees. Does that sound right? 'Cause that's what I heard during this testimony. Some people have a right to the information, and some people don't. There are extenuating circumstances. So with that, there being no further testimony, no additional questions, I do believe, we are going to take a motion to adopt the H1 substitute for House Bill 5148. So moved by Representative Edwards. With that, Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
The motion to adopt the substitute H1, Chair Young.
Yes.
Representatives Kofia.
Yes.
Glanville.
Yes.
Arbit.
Yes.
Edwards.
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
Wozniak.
Yes.
Fox.
Yes.
Johnson.
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 10 yeas, 0 nays, 0 pass. The substitute is adopted.
Okay, very good. Now I need a motion to report House Bill 5148 with recommendation as a H1 substitute. That would be so moved by Representative Glanville. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
On the motion to report with recommendation as substitute H1, Chair Young?
Yes.
Representatives Kofia?
Yes.
Glanville?
Yes.
Arbit?
Yes.
Edwards?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Wozniak?
Pass.
Fox?
Yes.
Johnson?
Pass.
Thompson?
Pass.
Madam Chair, you have 7 yeas, 0 nays, 3 pass. House Bill 5148 is reported with recommendation as substitute H1.
Excellent, thank you. Now I need a motion to report House Bill 5149. Oh, the substitute, sorry. Okay, where is, there it is. Now I need a motion to adopt the H1 substitute for House Bill 5149. So moved by Representative Arbit. You good with that? All right, Representative Arbit. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
On the motion to adopt the substitute, Chair Young?
Yes.
Representatives Kofia?
Yes.
Glanville?
Yes.
Arbit?
Yes.
Edwards?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Wozniak?
Yes.
Fox?
Yes.
Johnson?
Yes.
Thompson?
Yes.
Madam Chair, you have 10 yeas, 0 nays, 0 pass. The substitute is adopted.
Okay, now I need a motion to report House Bill 5149 with recommendation as an H1 substitute. So moved by Representative Edwards. Thank you so much. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
On the motion to report, Chair Young?
Yes.
Representatives Kofia?
Yes.
Glanville?
Yes.
Arbit?
Yes.
Edwards?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Wozniak?
Yes.
Fox?
Yes.
Johnson?
Pass.
Thompson?
Pass.
Madam Chair, you have 8 yeas, 0 nays, 2 pass. House Bill 5149 is reported as recommendation as substitute H1.
All right, very good. Seeing no further questions, I need a motion to, we don't have any extra members, therefore being no further business before the Committee of Family, Seniors, and Children, or Family, Children, and Seniors, we will now stand adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone.